Okay, great. Thanks so much, Christine. And it's a real delight to be here and join our Genki team in Genk for this summit on nature-based solutions and where we go from here. I'm stepping in, I'd like to say, for Alice Reel, who can't be here. But she has prepared this in detail, so I want to acknowledge her work and, of course, the work of the whole team on putting this panel together. So today, what we're going to be doing is discussing where we go from here. So the name of the session is Policy for Upscaling Nature-Based Solutions. Where do we go from here? And we're going to be talking with some policymakers and researchers about that. How do we build on all the work that's been done going forward? So the objectives of the session, first of all, nature-based solutions support major EU policy initiatives, in particular the European Green Deal, the biodiversity strategy, and of course the adaptation strategy, with the goals of fostering biodiversity and making Europe more climate resilient. And so the nature-based solutions, how do we enable them to do that, is a really important question. And we'll hear from European, from regional, and from city policymakers here, as well as researchers, about the policies that we need in order to upscale nature-based solutions towards a nature positive, a carbon neutral, an equitable economy and society. So no challenge there, I guess. What does upscaling mean? What are we talking about here? So what we hope you walk away with is how are we going to move from individual, independent nature-based solutions delivered in different places by small groups of individuals to ones where nature-based solutions are embedded city and region-wide. So how do we get them to really build up their impact, both broadly across multiple geographies, but also across multiple levels? How do we define a nature-positive economy? So how do we build that kind of an economy and that kind of a governance structure to enable nature-based solutions? How we define it is one in which businesses, governments, consumers, and communities take action in order to reduce and remove the drivers and pressures that are fueling the degradation of nature, and to work actively to improve the state of nature and the ecosystem services that it provides. So that's how we define that. Just to set a little bit of a stage of, so we've got regional, European, and city policymakers, but speaking from the World Economic Forum, the latest view is that investing can create in this way can create business opportunities to the scale of 10 trillion annually, and create roughly 400 million jobs by 2030. So that isn't only about nature. It is about working with nature, as our earlier speaker said, working with nature, but also to create a society in which everyone shares in positive in the value creation that does. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our panel. And let me start with Wim Dries, who is the mayor of Genk. And he is representing our city and local levels. And he does that with evident expertise. Let me get my next thing out for the bios here. So not only is he mayor of Genk, but he's president of the Flemish Association of Local Councils. There's 308 of those, I think.
300 today.
We lost some.
We had some communities that had a merge.
Fantastic. Well, 300 is a big number anyway. A group to herd. So it's great to have you here representing that view, and also, of course, the city of Genk. And I will say that Mayor Dries is also well known not just for his environmental advocacy and policies and drive, but also works a lot in smart cities and using technology. And I think that's a piece that we may explore if we have time, if not in this session, but in later sessions. So thanks very much for being here, Mayor Dries. Our second panel member is Jelle van der Berg. There you are. Jelle, well, you're very welcome. And he is the Deputy Chief of Staff for Environment for the Flemish Minister for Justice, Enforcement, Environment, Energy and Tourism. So some combinations there as well. There's a lot of things. A lot of things. And thank you for being here, and also for stepping in for the Minister Demir, who was unable to be here today. So thank you for this. We won't put you under too much pressure. Okay. Also, finally, or not finally, but we have our third person here is Dr. Philippe Tulkens. Dr. Tulkens is head of unit at the Healthy Planet Directorate in Climate and Planetary Boundaries Unit in the Directorate of Research and Innovation. And so he is going to join us and talk about the European perspective on this question. And then last, and definitely not least, it's great to see you, Sander. Sander Jacobs is a senior researcher for INBO, which is the Institute for Nature and Forest. He's in the research group on nature and society and coordinates the program on urban nature. So we have quite a good group here to talk about these issues. So what I might do after my introductions is we have a couple of questions that we're going to start with in our list. And I might go to those now. So sorry about having my numbers of pieces of paper here. We're going to start with Mayor Dries, if we may. Yep. And over the past years, a project I know very close to your heart is the Steamer Valley. And it's been promoted and developed as a very large nature-based solution with the support of the Connecting Nature project, but with very strong support in the local community and business. So how are you now in the city going to amplify the impact of the Steamer Valley? What is necessary to actually grow its impact across the region?
Well, if I look to the Steamer Valley as one of the important projects that we have now in our policy at the city level, well, I think that if we look to how the project, what the impact was on the project, we learned quite a bit on different levels with the Steamer Valley. And if I look, first of all, of course, a project like the Steamer Valley in Connecting Nature is a transversal project. It means it goes with the spatial program, it goes with the socio-economic program, and we also used quite a bit of the capacity that we had on social innovation. We think that's very important to have that with us in working around the project. And of course, you need partners. You cannot do it alone. You have a coalition of partners, of management to make sure that you have a lot of impact. So that transversal way of working around, I think that really has an impact also for the future. We learned that more than we did in the past, and I think that's one of the advantages of the project that we have done here in Genk. But also we need a transition. We need a transformation, and I'm glad that also the regional level here is, because of course if I look to the policies on the regional level, the policies still have maybe a conservative old way of looking to, by example, nature-based solutions. If I look to the subsidies from Flanders that we have in sewerage installations, we are now, and I think the last 5 years, quite some things changed in thinking about that, and it was very important because today we still have a lot of projects in Flanders and also in cities that are really based upon old ways of thinking, and we have to change that. And of course, that's a how should I say, that's something that takes time, of course. We know that, but I think that we really have set a step forward. And by example, also in Genk with Suds and Soda, one of the projects that we do here, I really believe that we are changing things there, and we should go that way. A third element that I think that is important is the process innovation. And I think really that's important because if I look in 2017, we had the opportunity, of course, after the elections of 2018, for our policy objectives. Every 6 years, the city makes new policy objectives. And of course, with the Genk team that we had, they really used that momentum to make sure that in our city policies, in our objectives for the following 6 years, the Steamer Valley, but most also the methodology that we have learned, the transversal way of thinking, was integrated in our policies. And that was very good because not only upon the Steamer Valley as a blue-green vein through our cities, not only that, but also other projects, city projects, we used the things that we have learned, and I think that is also what you were asking. And of course, the financial leverage. I think that's also very important, because 1 and 1 is 3, and I think that we have really seen with this project, Connecting Nature, the impact is really by using that financial leverage. We also had, by example, Flanders has a model of city renewing projects. That's not only in the environmental way, it's in the way of how the larger cities in Flanders can use new methodology, new way of thinking to really change something in their city. And we also got support from there, not only from the environmental offices, but also from a very wide jury who said, really, this is something that we need to change, not only Genk, but to change also the thinking in Flanders. And I think the combination of the transversal way, of the process innovation, of course, of the financial level, and of the transition, I think that those 4 elements that we have learned in this project and that we are now using in whole our city really makes a difference for the future. And yet, to tell the truth, I think that it takes a whole city to connect nature. So I think that feeling really now is, that awareness is really now in our city. So that's one of the things that we have learned. So we're very eager to go on and to use the learning lessons that we've had in this project.
So there you go. Thanks so much for that. That's really a very enthusiastic embracing of the process. And as you said, the transversal sort of different way of thinking, not just to do a project, but actually to create policies, which is really an interesting point. So I'm going to move now to give each of our panel a chance. I'm going to move to Mr. Jelle van den Berg and ask you, or just remind you first of all, that the Urban by Nature Hub, so that was a question in one of the earlier sessions about where can cities find out more about this. The Urban by Nature Hub on NBS for Flanders is being launched today. So we're very excited about that. Thank you very much. What do you consider nature-based solutions, well, how do you consider them interesting economically? Could you speak to that? And particularly in terms of upscaling them in some way to have that kind of impact. What's interesting about that for Flanders?
Thank you. It works, yeah, it works. For Flanders, it's really important that we start thinking with nature. I think some previous speakers were saying that as well, that we have to admit that in the past we worked against nature quite often as policymakers. In urban planning, in agriculture, in protecting nature, sometimes we were thinking, how can we put nature into these nature reserves? And which is really interesting now, which is changing, and my minister is embracing this completely. How can we work with nature? And one of the things is that we are launching this website, but we are launching and providing finance, a lot of financing to this new place in Antwerp, which is called the Brialmont House. And this is a place which is studying nature-based solutions for cities. And local policy makers, but the scientists as well, can gather in this house, and we are giving the opportunity to scientists, but we are bringing real solutions towards these local cities, these policy makers on a local level. How can we improve spatial planning and think with nature? In the past, we put rivers and streams underground. Thanks to this investment program, what we call Blue Deal in Flanders, more than 500 million euros are invested in recreating wetlands, because a lot of wetlands were lost. And something really interesting in that scheme, the Blue Deal scheme, is what we see is that industry is really enthusiastic about that. For example, Coca-Cola, which is a huge company, is investing into to restore these wetlands, because they say water is what we need. Without clean water, they cannot produce their products. And Flanders is investing in restoring these wetlands together with Natuurpunt, for example, to restore these wetlands in the neighborhood of the great industrial complexes through Flanders, to ensure the water that the companies need in Flanders. And that's one thing that we are providing as Flanders. But into spatial planning and into urban planning, we really would like that the policymakers on the local level, but also in Flanders, think with nature. And because of that, this Brielle Moorhouse is really important for us.
Thanks for that. That's, I think, a point that echoes one from our opening talk about how we need to think differently, even to begin this journey of transition. So thanks very much for that. I might move now to Philippe Tulkens and ask you, Philippe, you know, Horizon 2020 and of course the Green Deal and many European programs are investing, have been, and presumably intend to invest hugely in nature-based solutions going forward. And I think there's a motive there. It's a very rich motive across many intentions. But are there intentions around the economic development that you see great potential for in these investments in nature-based solutions? And you know, can we catalyze a transformation environmentally, economically, and socially through those investments? Can I give you the floor?
Thank you. A very easy question for the European Commission, of course. It's quite vast. I just would like to start with first my congratulations to the scientists, also the local leaders, the regional leaders, who are now trying to transform society, to restore our relation with nature. Of course, to catalyze and to bring this change, it needs to be done at all levels. We first need to have the knowledge base. That's what the scientists provided since decades, very generously. Of course, the EU program for research, Horizon 2020, now Horizon Europe, supported them by investing more than 280 million in 32 projects in this area, but they did the job to develop the knowledge base. And then this knowledge was also transferred to policymakers, to investors and others. And some took the risk, because this is the key issue. How to catalyze the change and to bring in, you need to find people who are open-minded, who would understand and perhaps be ready to revise the conventional thinking on issues. We heard from the mayor of Genk and from the deputy head of cabinet of Mrs. Zuhal Demir, sorry, and that they are trying. And this is key for the policy. You mentioned the Green Deal. Fantastic. Indeed, it was a major political development at European level. We know now we have a target for 2030 and 2050 on climate issues and also for adaptation, even if the target is less easy to spell out than the mitigation target. We have objectives for biodiversity, pollution and all that. The Green Deal is a major change. But this could happen only if at local level, national level, regional level, all levels, there were not enough people who would be ready to engage, even voters, let's be clear. That's what politicians are experts at, is knowing when the population is ready to change. They need to propose a vision that they are ready to accept. So, to come back to your question, catalyzing the transformation requires a vast array of knowledge, change, readiness, and this is why we meet here, is to share this knowledge, share experience, and then find ways to accelerate, because this is the challenge now, and to bring more investors. There are wonderful experiments that have been done. It's still at a limited scale, and we need to scale this up. We can do that through, of course, local initiative, regional initiatives, but also the EU is trying to help in this. I'll talk about that perhaps also later. We are promoting now the missions of Horizon Europe on adaptation to climate change, but also there's a mission on the ocean, on smart and climate neutral cities, a mission on soil. I would invite you to have a look. You can Google it. You will easily find them. Those are activities that go beyond research and innovation, in particular to bring the local stakeholders and adapt. Maybe your communities of entity could participate. There is a survey, a charter. The survey is short. It's not a long questionnaire to fill in. On the 7th of June, there is a major meeting in Brussels, the Forum on Adaptation to Climate Change for the mission. And the mission should not be mixed up with the adaptation strategy. It's part of the EU strategy for adaptation, but it's to test solutions on the ground, place-based activities coming from research and innovation, and really implemented with the local stakeholders to show that this transformation is possible, affordable, and doable even in the democratic state.
So I think the missions, I encourage everyone to have a look at these. They really are ambitious moonshot type efforts to try and transform European society and economies. So I'm not going to start talking about it because I'll keep talking, but I want to hand it over to our last panel member for his comments. Sander, can you talk a little bit, reflecting on the comments that have been made about our different policymakers? Can a nature-based or nature-positive economy approach help us implement these increasingly ambitious policy goals at all levels? I mean, what can this really help, and if so, how?
Thanks. Yeah, the short answer is yes. So that's my intervention. No, there's a lot that has been said, and I've been trying to adapt my response to it. So first of all, I think it's very clear that research demonstrates that nature-based solutions and this kind of project have a huge potential. So they have a potential to solve the biodiversity crisis, but also take care of many other challenges that regions and cities are coping with. So this is very clear. On the level of Flanders, what we are at INBO are trying to do in this for the nature sector or the nature policy sector new area is to first of all get an overview, because the Steamerbeek Valley and different projects we are encountering are really fantastic projects that demonstrate how it can be done, how to tackle challenges regarding governance, policy, economy. But most of these remain unknown, hidden in some city or village website. And this is where the presidency of Mayor Dries and also maybe the Natuurhuis Brialmont can also facilitate to bring together all these experiences. I think there might be 5 or 6 Steamerbeek Valley stories hidden still in Flanders, and I think we need to start building this expertise exchange at the regional level. What research also has shown, and this was mostly research financed by the European Commission to demonstrate the potential, is that there are remaining problems that were not on the radar. And this is why at INBO we're also looking towards outscaling. Upscaling is important, but outscaling outside of the urban, happy, middle-class context which solves a tangible water-related problem. This is where most demonstrations have shown to be really effective, towards all the other communities and all the other complex societal challenges. And you have mentioned the business, the revenues, the jobs, and all the societal benefits that can be created. But the European Commission also realizes if we're going to follow only the front runners and the locations and the communities where it's easy to implement, we're going to create more inequity. And this is related with the justice aspect of nature-based solutions, but also with the effectiveness. Which cities are going to succeed, which are going to get money and funding to perform innovation, which regions, and which communities are involved. And these are things that are very well demonstrated in the Connecting Nature pilots and in Genk, to have diverse approach and to create actual fair nature instead of just nature for nature. And this is when I have to link to the policy, like the Major already said, the current policy instruments don't really fit, especially the nature instruments don't really fit the urban context or this new nature definition that we are creating together. And this is where also research at INBO on policy effectiveness of different instruments, on more inclusive policies that include more sectors, more communities, and trajectories like the INBO trajectory, innovation trajectory on cities thinking like a forest, who are creating a new instrument for nature management in cities, the Nature Tissue Plan, which is also linked to the Steamer Hub and to the Brialmont House. Things are coming together, and I think in our region we can take upscaling to a next level and also adapt the definition of nature-based solutions based on the challenges that have been encountered in the many other European projects. So no answers yet, but a lot of challenges. But I think in Flanders we can choose our path more carefully and not go for the happy solutions, but really think how can nature-based solutions tackle the problems of all society instead of the problems of some communities only.
I think it's a really important point about investing in nature. In some ways requires and fosters and facilitates an inclusive engagement with wider society. Because once you start bringing in the plants and the animals, it seems a lot easier to bring in pretty much all the rest of the people as well. So I think that's a really good point. I'm going to pick up the one on investment for my next one. So we've had kind of viewpoints from our different panel members from different, if you will, levels of policy making or policy advice. So what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about some of the things that people have seen on the ground and have their specific ideas about how we might build on the work that's been done and scale up these nature-based solutions. So the first question, and I'm going to direct this to Wim, if I may, because you've been working in the Steamer Valley now and in Genk and obviously across various parts of Belgium. What benefits have you actually seen? Can you describe the benefits of the nature-based solutions you've seen? It could be the Steamer Valley or others that kind of get us down this road of a transformation to a nature-positive society.
Well, indeed, if I look with my view upon Flanders, and it's like some speakers already have told, there are more projects of nature-based solutions in Flanders with VVSG, the association. We follow them up, and I see on a lot of places, I see the benefits. And if I look to Genk with the Steamer Valley, well, I see two large elements of benefits. First of all, the ecological benefit. I still remember the city council of 2003, where we preserved, or where we asked Flanders to preserve almost 500,000 square meters of nature in the Steamer Valley, and we got the permission from Flanders at that moment, and it was Natuurpunt who really said we have to work upon it. We really have to make sure that, because it's a very high level of nature, it's a Natura 2000 area where we have in the Steamer Valley, in the whole of the Steamer Valley, we have that kind of positive nature, and today I see that it used to be hidden. Today there is respect because we have we have combined the neighborhoods and the Steamer Valley, and we have made sure that the nature that has to be preserved can also be preserved. But of course the area is much bigger, and we see now by creating, by example, also a place where bicycles can drive, where we can open it and where we connect neighborhoods with the Steamer Valley. There used to be homes everybody was with their back towards the Steamer Valley. Today they are shifting, they are not really together already, but they are seeing it and they are connecting in the valley. And I think that is also a very good socio-economic benefit. But I think that's important that we have done, and we invested more in nature. And I think now also our citizens know it's important. My son, and he is 17, I know 3 years ago, I think he came home and he said, "Father or Dad, the Steamer Valley, it's really cool. You have to go to there." And that was for myself a moment that I thought, if he was 15, 16 at that moment, with his friends, he discovered the cycling paths, he discovered where they could be. And I think that is the way to go, because then we are really reaching out for people, and they can see the ecological value, but they can also see the social value. And I think that we have to combine that where it's possible, always with respect for nature, always with the combination. And the Steamer Valley has all those ecological benefits that we are using. And from that Steamer Valley, we now see that not only in the Steamer Valley, Genk is a very green city, we have a lot of nature and we really want to preserve it, but we also want to share it with the people that live in our city, to see that every inhabitant in Genk has within 1600 meters an entrance to more than 30,000 square meters of nature. And it's for the bigger cities in Flanders, we're number one. And I think today, more than 10 years or 15 years ago, people really see that due to what we have done in the Steamer Valley. And if I look to the socio-economical way, if I look, by example, to the Stalenstraat, and I invite you, it's not far away. It used to be the retail street for the mines with a lot of activities, with shops, with restaurants, with cafes and things like that. And of course, after the closure of the mines, they really had some problems. And today we have a new plan, and that is also a plan that connects to the Steamer Valley. We have called it the Valley of Worlds because, of course, we are very diverse, and we are really making the connection from the Stalenstraat, that is just like 500 meters, 100 meters from the Steamer Valley, and we see there growing a strong community, and also not only in the Stalenstraat, but around in the neighborhoods that are connecting to the Steamer Valley. We see that community, and they're working around steamerdales, they're working around products in food that they can use. We now have steamer ice cream, we have a steamer beer, and all that kinds of things, and it means that people are connected to each other, but also to nature. And I think those benefits we really see at this moment in the Steamer Valley. So yes, we have chosen the path of creativity and innovation, and I think that we're today at the crossroads of how we can go further, and there's only one way to go forward, and that is using naturally based solutions. And I agree, we are still searching for models, for economical models and things like that, but I think that we really have made the first very important step.
So if we've made a step like that with the Steamer Valley, where you've combined, I think, investment from government, so the Flanders giving the permission and the investment, and the citizens sort of reaching across and working into it, and some business incentives. The steamer deals is an interesting one. We may come back to it. Is there anything specific that sort of government policies can do that encourage that? Is there anything, if you were to pick one or two things, and then I might ask then yourself, Jelle, after that, is there anything, one or two things that actually enabled that to really kick off?
Well, I think that we should, if I could look to policies on that is necessary, we should step out of the project and we should go to the normal way. Today it's too much a project. It's a project where we get funding as a project, where we get a permission to do something. Well, we should change that to the new normal. And I think if we do that, then we can really accelerate in doing a lot of things about natural-based solutions.
Moving in then to the regional level, the Flanders level, Jelle, what have you seen that has enabled this kind of transformation in these kinds of projects? Nature-based solutions in particular, but maybe a wider, different way of thinking and people pursuing these other kinds of environmental and social benefits.
Yeah, making nature into normal would be a big step and a huge step, but it's a difficult step. I think Sander already mentioned it. We have to involve every single inhabitant of Flanders, and that's quite difficult because people they're not used to thinking with nature. Lots of people are thinking against nature, not with nature, not particularly against, but not with nature. And a lot of mayors, a lot of local municipalities, they have a lot of keys to do that, to make thinking with nature as the new normal. By building houses, by house restoration, because that's really important when we are getting into climate policy. People have to make a huge restoration effort into their houses. From Flanders, we are funding these really important steps that have to be taken. But it's difficult to switch from project thinking into seeing nature as a normal thing and involve nature in all these thinkings of every Flemish inhabitant. That's really difficult. So how do we try to do that is by bringing nature close to people, into cities, into city verges, and especially during COVID, we saw that people were going towards nature. Everything else fell apart. There were no activities. People had to stay indoors or close by. People had to work at their houses. And there were lots of people going into nature because nature was the only thing that was available at that point. And even now, we are back here together with everybody without facial masks, which is a great thing. People are still going to these nature reserves. People are still visiting. People are still using the Steamerbig Valley, but a lot of city forests. They're not fleeing because they're just like nature, and that's what we need, and that's what my minister is trying to do. We're bringing nature close by. We're not only investing in the Nature 2000 areas, but we are investing a lot of money, 120 million euros into new forests. We need 4,000 hectares new forest this legislation. We are almost at 700 hectares now in 2 years. That's a lot of new forest, but we have to step up this this policy, and that's what we're trying to do, bringing nature close by, and that's a really important step to normalize nature.
Point that the COVID-19 pandemic made us all realize that nature was actually right there and how important it was that nature was right there in front of us. I think one of the things that the European Green Deal, we'll come back to that, Philippe, is calling for local green deals. And so we've heard a couple of ideas and the things, experiences and initiatives at the local and the regional levels. Are there things that Europe can do to support local green deals?
Yeah, Europe can move only if the local entities support it. We should not live under the assumption that Brussels can steer the whole Europe in the direction. First, also in Europe, we have a lot of diversity. Some countries, some regions are way ahead of others. And therefore, the EU policy is not always really at the front, but tries to do what can be a reasonable compromise. So that's why these local initiatives are fundamental, and they need to be given visibility. And the mayors who engage in those need to be rewarded, the regional authorities as well. So that's for sure. The way we try to promote these local and support the local initiative, I mentioned the mission. It's clear. If you look at the plan for the mission on adaptation to climate change, the local dimension is really at the root of it. And by the way, at the center, you have the nature-based solutions, if you look at the documents. So we will do that. Also, much can be done through the regional policy. The regional policy, it's co-managed, so it means that the regions actually decide themselves how they allocate the funds. If they want to allocate their funds to nature-based solutions or projects that do transform the regions, they can. And there are many other instruments, existing instruments that can be mobilized, but it needs to be triggered by the authorities that are in charge. And we would support guidelines I provided. For instance, also one of the issue on INBS is to have a standard. We are working on this to develop standards that can be used without each time reinventing the wheel and seeing the risks. So this, we work on that to facilitate the uptake of the solution and their testing on the ground, certainly. Yeah.
Okay, so I think what we're hearing is the balls in our courts here in the regions and the cities. I think, just over to you, I think, Sander, are you hearing what you need to hear? Do you think we're on the right path? And are some of these ideas and the views that are held at the different levels of governance, are we heading in the right direction? Are there things that we really need to add in or take away in order to get to this new world of nature-based solutions and a nature-positive economy?
Yeah, that's kind of a big. I don't feel like that I have the mandate to say, but I think a lot of we are definitely going or looking in the good direction, and I hear the regional level saying we need to involve every inhabitant. In principle, yes, but of course we have systems for that are in place, and I think with some basic adaptations we can jump a huge way. Like now, nature-based thinking and making this a new normal is maybe the goal on the long term, and that would of course change everything. But this will not work with the current framing we have, policy-wise, but also what our definition of nature is. Because our nature is defined, it's a bit old school, it's a bit nature for reserves. And this remains important, but this framing is not going to work to solve problems, to provide nature-based solutions for problems that people actually have. So this is where we also need this reciprocal thinking of how can we adapt our definition of nature, make it a fair nature definition, develop standards, some basic standards, maybe based also on the European level, but adapted to the Flemish situation, which can help us in allocating budgets to make sure that this is not going to the old school only, and that we really reap those benefits in the cities and in the local communities. And actually, it's a bit of a research question on how can we define natural quality, or what is nature quality. And this is linked to the policies that have to be developed for this. And if we develop a fair nature concept, which provides solutions for real life problems and takes the opportunities in Flanders, we are getting a long way. But to do that, we need to build on the cities, because for cities this is very logic. They are already doing this because they are doing it in practice and solving their problems. So again, bringing together the local expertise that is hidden everywhere in Flanders is very important. And I think collaborating with the networks and setting this up as a first research activity would be crucial, instead of defining it from our scientific ivory tower, what is good and bad. Yes.
Thanks. I'm going to maybe pick up a little bit on this idea that the world changes as we're putting our plans in place and investing our millions and educating our students. And you've mentioned how the COVID-19 pandemic, how it changed everything we did, and in some ways how we saw the importance of nature. And I think I might say it gave us, those of us who want to bring nature into our everyday lives, it gave us a boost in some ways, in many ways. It made it quite clear how important nature was to all of us. I think what's happening now in Europe, you know, the security situation, challenges for energy supply, the uncertainty that this has brought, I think that's another big movement that might influence us one way or another in being able to pursue these policies on upscaling nature-based solutions. And I might just open it to the floor if you have any comments about what do you see happening in the next near future with respect to policies being challenged because of the current situation in Europe, or indeed accelerated? Do you see any sort of opportunities or big risks there for this particular policy direction? I mean, to start, you're nodding, Jelle, so I'm going to over to you first.
Yeah, thank you. It's a difficult question because we don't know how the situation will evolve. But what we are a little bit afraid of, for us, food security is really important, of course. But what we see is that some groups are trying to use this fear of food security to attack the environmental rules, and to maybe because they want, and I'm looking at agriculture, of course, we have to be aware that a sustainable agriculture on European level has to be an agriculture with nature, with water resources, and we cannot step down from the efforts we did in the past and the efforts we're still doing to make agriculture more environmental friendly. And that's what we're doing and trying to do in Flanders as well. We have to reassure that because of this food insecurity, we might face, but we're not sure about that, that agriculture and nature are still going hand in hand. And that's what we're trying to do in Europe, in Flanders, I'm sorry, but I'm really hoping that Europe follows in that way of looking forward to the future.
Well, indeed, Jelle, it's a difficult question, especially also from the local perspective. But of course, it's a terrible crisis that we are in right now. Insecurity, being uncertain for people that are living is always bad. I mean, you need stability, but like they sometimes say, crisis also makes change, and I think that we have seen that with COVID, and probably also here now, by example, in the energy transition. That is a difficult transition because we know, and I think we're all for renewable energy, and we need a lot of solar and wind energy, but we all know if you look to a global level, it is not easy to, with the electrification of the society, it's not easy to produce all over the world. Up until today, every week they're still opening a coal energy plant around the world. And of course, also that has an impact on the global level. So we have to find ways. And I think that the discussion about energy now is really at the top mind of everybody, energy security, but also the change of energy. And of course, if you look to if you look to what we have paid the last 50 days to Russia for getting gas here, it's a tremendous amount of money, and prices are rising. So everybody is looking towards how can we change. And in my city, I have a lot of people that don't have that much of money, and if energy prices raises, it's a terrible thing for them. So they go to wood, they go to other ways, and we have to find solutions for that. How can we indeed make sure that renovation of not using energy is always the best. It's the first step. Energy efficiency is the first step, also in the mobility, also in the houses. And we really need to make a change there, but we need time. It will cost a lot of money and it will cost a lot of time. We have 27,000 houses, 22,000 houses don't, of 23,000 houses don't have the standards that we need. So it's a tremendous challenge for local governments. And if I look at it's also Koen van Mechelen who says that here. It's an artist here in Genk, and he says the global can only exist through the generosity of the local. If it comes to food, if it comes to work, we are in a global world, I'm sure of that, but we need the local people to make the change. And I think that a crisis at this moment like Ukraine will bring people to the change, but we also have to bring back stability in prices. We have to bring back elements to see that there is hope, there is a future. And I think that is the challenge also for local policymakers to give answers, because 2050 is not far. But for people that are having problems with paying their energy bill today, 2050 is eternally. It's far away. So we have to find ways to make the change in steps and make it inclusive and bring all the inhabitants with it. So it's a big challenge, I think.
Yeah. Can I hand it over to you, Philippe, just to say what your thoughts on this are?
Yeah, very complex question indeed, but a key one. I think it's a threat and an opportunity, the security situation in relation to the Green Deal. The threat is, of course, we see that some short-term decisions have already been taken to re-intensify agriculture and waive some environmental rules at European level. This is not what science recommends. It was taken. So that is a threat. On the other hand, it's an opportunity because we can accelerate the transformation in the Green Deal. If you look at the question of energy security, we are asking ourselves, can we reduce our consumption of gas and fossil fuels imported from Russia? And we saw many reports from studies, quickly done actually, that a lot was possible, much more than people thought. And the more we study the issue, we see that it's possible. So that's where the knowledge developed by the scientists, in particular the economists, who are key in these issues. We have, I forgot to mention that in the other question, is that for me, to catalyze the development of an NBS, we need really to improve the economics of nature-based solutions. I'm not saying this to criticize those social scientists and economists who did this work. It's wonderful. We'll talk about the publication later today. But we need really to make sure that the thinking around these issues penetrates the mainstream of economic thinking. We are not yet there. And the framework needs to be there. We heard the local difficulties to convince the citizens to bring the change. But the policy framework is not always conducive and helpful. I happen to be Belgian, so I know Belgium. I mean, just the rules on company cars. I've worked on in my past where I was working for the Belgian administration. And also elsewhere in Europe are not really very recommended by what scientists would say as a good measure. Traffic is a big issue in Belgium, and it was created by a long tradition of favoring company cars. And we need to engage in the debate, because we had here so far a very nice and friendly discussion, but the difficulty for the policymakers is to say no to some people and to fight some lobby who are pushing for their interests, which is not necessarily in line with the general interest. And in reconnecting with nature, in restoring our relation with nature, this capacity to say no is difficult to get, and researchers can, by developing good arguments, good reasoning, give courage to the politicians to take the right decision.
On that. Sandra, over to you to wrap this one up, this question up.
I feel the weight. Yeah, and I'm not going to repeat. There is a lot of risk, of course, but I want to maybe go back to the COVID crisis, which has also shown some positive things. I mean, of course, it was terrible, but what has been proven, if you look back, that is a very fast global transformative change in a lot of policies is possible. Something that many people were thinking, yeah, it's naive to think that the world can change fast and that we can adapt quickly. As in our societies, we have proven that we can adapt very quickly if we know how serious and urgent the problem is. And indeed, there is a big role for researchers. But what I hope and what I think is needed is that the awareness that has been growing in society, and that has been demonstrated also in the years before COVID with demonstrations of the youth and the anti-climate and this whole societal debate, people are very aware of the importance of nature, the values of nature and how it's degraded, and what the main drivers are, what the main problems are. And I would hope that this knowledge is not only remaining in the science policy interaction, but that also the acceptance of the general public for keeping to the status quo, the vested interests, which are a cause of the drivers of biodiversity decline, will not be accepted, and that there will be the political backing from the streets and from the NGOs to really move in a direction which is transformative. And as I will explain tomorrow, if we don't do it, there is actually not a lot of hope. But I think COVID, and these kind of crises, even if they are terrible, they provide some hope, because we are a very adaptable species if we want to.
We'll rely on our adaptive capacities on this one. Thank you very much. I think for this one, we're going to wrap up the panel discussion and thank our speakers and our panel members very, very much for that standard way. Thank you very much for taking my questions and for answering them so well. We have a few more minutes now in this session in order to introduce and launch a EC expert publication, The Vital Role of Nature-Based Solutions in the Nature-Positive Economy. So this is the messages from the experts into policy making. And I would like to invite Siobhan McQuaid, who is the lead author on that publication, to come up and give us a little bit of an idea of what is said in that. So carry on, Siobhan.
Thank you. And I hope that we have a link to this publication, which has just been launched today, and it should be available on the EC website and also on the Connecting Nature website. And this is what it looks like. So it's the result. We have a little, yeah, yay. Thank you. So it's the result of a year and a half of work, and it's not my own work. In fact, this has been a collaborative effort. We started looking at this at the beginning of last year, and through a working group set up within the task force of the European Commission. It brings together all of these. Philippe mentioned the hundreds of millions of research that has been invested in the Commission into nature-based solutions. And these projects are brought together in task forces. And there's a specific task force looking at financing business models and governance. And within that, we've looked at how can nature-based solutions be part of this transition that we heard everybody talking about to the Green Deal and to a nature-positive economy. And I have to say, personally, I think this report is long overdue. We've heard a lot of discussion here this morning, and I think in the last 5 years, the concept of nature-based solutions has, in some policy areas, become very well known. And in particular, I think we've heard mentioned the COVID pandemic. And indeed, the COVID pandemic has really highlighted both the importance of nature for mental health, for physical health and well-being, but also, as Sandra has pointed out, the inequities. Not everybody has the same access to nature. So I loved what you were saying, Wim, about the ambition to give every citizen equal access to nature. And that is something some of our other front-runner cities like Glasgow have also been saying from the start. So that there's research and increasing evidence of that importance. Of course, there's also an increasing evidence base of the impact of nature-based solutions on the environment, on climate change and biodiversity loss. And this research and the development of this evidence base is really, really important. But some of you guys are politicians, and there's an old saying in politics, and particularly around election time, it's all about the economy, right? So if we want, I won't finish the sentence, you probably know what it is, okay? So if we really want to secure investment in nature-based solutions, we have to make a case for the economic benefits of nature-based solutions. And this is where I think that maybe there's a gap in research. And this is why I think this report is overdue. Because I suppose we really need to know, and policymakers need to know, and economic policymakers need to know, what is the potential of nature-based solutions to create new jobs, to sustain livelihoods. It's all very well talking about the new economy and the Green Deal, but it's all about jobs at the end of the day. So we need to be able to show that nature-based solutions can lead to innovations and jobs and sustainable livelihoods. And what we have done in this report, we haven't answered all of the questions, okay? But what we have highlighted is 11 kind of areas of economic activity where nature-based solutions can play an important role in generating innovations, in creating jobs, and in supporting this transition. And we really need to get that message out to economic policymakers. And for that to happen, what we're really lacking is hard economic data on, we heard Mary, you mentioned at the very top, 400 million jobs in the World Economic Forum. My policymakers in Ireland have said to me, tell us how, tell us where. We need the granularity. So that is what this report highlights is, first of all, there's a need for a change in thinking. That's fundamental. But beyond that, there's a need for solid research to support that change in thinking and give economic policy makers the impetus that they need to make that transition. So that's what we're trying to do here is both highlight the potential, but also show that we need a lot more research and we need a lot more data to support policymakers in making those decisions. Is that enough of an introduction to what it's about?
Thank you very much. So I think what we have reserved at the time now is for Philippe to make a comment back about how we can use this report in future policies and research and innovation actions.
Well, I'll be very quick because the introduction was so clear. I don't think I need to add much. I would say read the report, but I may appear as Greta Thunberg asking people to read the IPCC report. It's a bit of the same. I'm the EU representative to the IPCC meeting, so I went through these long adoption meetings in the last months, including the Working Group 2 report on adaptation, vulnerability, and impacts. And there as well, the economic content of the report that is reflecting the published literature is relatively weak. And we could see this, that there are some research innovation gaps that need to be addressed. We will do that, of course, in the EU program. But it shows that we still have a difficulty. How to attract, as I said before, key economists to work on this and to pass on the message to the policymakers who need to be reassured that if they propose such policies that are nature-based solutions friendly, it will not backfire on them, and that the economics is sound. That's what they need to know. I said give courage, but it's really to underpin their decision with very rational and sound decision. And this publication can help in this by providing the knowledge, the examples. I think the examples are also very telling and reassuring, easy to understand. So therefore, I'm very grateful for this publication, and also for the enthusiasm that the researchers working on nature-based solutions have shown. In the European Commission, we have like more than 10,000 projects on research innovation across all disciplines. And I see that on NBS, the community is organized itself very well. It's very enthusiastic, and there's like an extra dimension, kind of an effect. And I'm not saying this just to say nice words. It has an impact, because we see the passion of the people working in this area who try to make their research useful to transform society. And now that we have to implement the Green Deal, it comes at the right time. You said long overdue, the publication. No, still time. And it's never too late to bring good knowledge. And I would encourage, therefore, all of you and the policymakers or your aides to brief the ministers, the local representative, and the decision makers, because it can help them. And the more projects we'll have, we'll build a whole map of project, and that will indeed bring a transformation at scale across Europe that is absolutely needed, because as you said, if we don't do it, it's going to be extremely severe. I know that we tend not to repeat these messages because we don't want to frighten people and get people out of the room, but if you see the IPCC reports recently published, the message from the scientific community endorsed by the government, this is important to remember, the IPCC is a discussion between the scientists and the government. The message is really serious. It's time to act now and as fast as possible.
Thank you for that, and for the people at home watching, it's okay, nobody ran screaming from the room on that message, because it is a true message that we're taking to heart. And I think, as you've said, Philippe, the people in this room not only are thinking with nature, but they're believing in nature, and passionate efforts have been shown on the panel, and also all the people here in the room, and I'm sure at home. So with that, I believe the next step is to invite as many of
the other lead authors of this publication, I would just like some of them, I think they're all here today, to join me. This is the first time they'll have had a chance to see it, and to just join me down here and to thank them for their contributions. So we have Esme Goyman from Trinity College Dublin and Horizon Nua. We have Daniela Rizzi from ICLEI in Germany, the Association of Local Governments for Sustainability. Joanne, if you'd like to join me, I hope you're all not sitting at the very back. This is your moment to shine after many months of work. We have Joanne Chante from LGI Innovation in France, and Thomas Andersson from the ICED in Sweden. So, and these represent, as I mentioned, some of the 16 Horizon 2020 projects And what we did is we had a 6-month consultation period. We had over 170 responses globally. And from that, we put together these recommendations, which, as Philippe said, we encourage you to take to economic policy makers to try to support more investment in nature-based solutions for this just, equitable transition to the nature-positive economy. So I'll give you guys a copy to hold. I don't know if Joanne made it in time.
Oh, there's only one. There's only one, I think.
You don't try and open it. Wait, there we go. No, you have one each. Look, one for.
It's a lot shorter than I thought. Great.
You could also join us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always welcome.
So well done. So with that happy moment, I think I'll wrap up this session, thanking all of our panel members, and of course Siobhan, and the authors of this report that made this panel, I think informed this panel quite significantly. And just want to say, I think we heard again today the three sort of themes of this whole overall summit, that sort of thinking with nature is absolutely critical, getting people to naturally think across projects and policies and the way they think about how we operate in the world, but also believing in it is something we're going to have to do. We talked about building with nature, all the things that have been done. There's a huge scale of challenge in trying to make our built environment something that is friendly with nature, but I think also bridging with nature, how the Steamer Valley gave a kind of a bridge for people to reach across and engage with. And I think that's a really important message. And of course, last, the living with nature, staying on our planet, but I think more importantly, surviving. Unless we do these things, it's not going to be living with nature. It's a pure question of survival. So thank you all for being here and being part of this important endeavor. And I'll leave you to that. Enjoy your lunch.